The testimony you are about to hear may change forever the way you imagine the world of kings and queens. Forget the soap operas, forget the Netflix series painted with golden filters. Today, you come with me to the era when power, perfume, and rot mixed in equal measure behind castle doors. Ready? Because this is the dirty, sticky, truth-soaked story of how and if the kings and queens of the Middle Ages bathed. Let's start by unlearning everything Hollywood showed us. If you, dear viewer, picture royalty stepping into steaming marble tubs filled with rose petals and being scrubbed by a squad of servants, you might be half right. For a select few, and only on rare ceremonial occasions. But the overwhelming reality was different. For centuries, bathing, that is, actually immersing yourself in water to clean your body, was considered at best unnecessary. At worst, it was dangerous, sinful, and a luxury as rare as gold itself. Imagine waking up as a king or queen in the 1200s. The chill of dawn creeps through thick walls. Your bedding is soft, perhaps, but the air is heavy, tinged with smoke, sweat, and something metallic. You don't rush to a bathroom. There isn't one. There wasn't even a dedicated bathroom in most medieval castles. What you did have was a sprawling chamber, thick with tapestries, fur rugs, and the commingling scents of all who lived there. Family, advisors, cooks, servants, pets, and centuries of embedded bodily fumes. The medieval mind was shaped by more than just lack of technology. Yes, plumbing was primitive or non-existent, but cultural forces were even stronger. In the early Middle Ages, Christianity ranked the soul far above the body. Washing was linked to earthly pleasures, temptation, and even vanity. Some chroniclers and clerics wrote that bathing too often could wash away your moral fiber, or bodies naked together could lead folks to sinful thoughts. A pure heart was better than clean feet, but this idea didn't come out of nowhere. There was a wariness of public baths, inherited from the Romans, whose luxurious bathing houses lingered as ghostly memories across Europe.
This place feels wrong.
Over time, cities turned their public baths into places of suspicion, refuges for the dirty-minded, the sick, and the sinful, rather than refugees from dirt. This left the castle aristocrat with a challenge. On special occasions, a royal wedding, a visit from a foreign emissary, a coronation, a wooden tub would be fetched. Think of it. Servants lug gallons of heated water from the smoky castle kitchens up endless flights of stairs to your private chamber. The bath is filled, layer upon layer, the water cooling with each bucket, and there sits the king or queen. Or sometimes the two together, for royalty could be above the scandal of shared nudity. Sometimes the whole family is present. Medical texts recommended bathing children with their parents for the health of all. But here's the catch. The tub is not drained and filled again. After the king or queen, maybe the prince splashes in, and then the younger daughters, the youngest siblings, the faithful old retainer. The water grows murky, cold, layered with royal residue. The royal tub itself wasn't necessarily luxurious. It was usually little more than a barrel, wood, bound with iron, and sometimes lined with cloth. The water cooled quickly, and a servant might pour in fresh infusions, rose petals if you're lucky, pungent herbs if you're not. Heavy curtains or screens surround the scene for a semblance of privacy, or at least to block the winter drafts. This wasn't an everyday affair. In fact, some monarchs bathed only a handful of times per year. There are records of queens in France and England who throughout a decade only bathed for Easter, Christmas, and their birthday, if that. A bath could be a symbol of celebration, of health, or even of medical necessity. They believed a hot soak could move the humors or pull bad spirits from the skin. If you were gravely ill, your doctor might order a bath with sulfur, vinegar, or medicinal oils. But most days, cleaning yourself meant a dry wash. The noble would strip to the waist and have servants scrub exposed skin with rough linen cloths, dipped sometimes in vinegar, alcohol, or perfumed waters. Sometimes this was done in full public view, at the bedside, with courtiers and family gossiping in the background. With bathing rare, the main way to cover up odor was to layer on perfumes, scented oils, and potpourri sacks. Queens in particular carried posies, nosegays, sachets of musk and lavender. Royal glove makers invented little leather pouches packed with herbs to stuff into the cuffs of sleeves or underneath wigs and hoods close to the nostrils. But could even perfume win this battle? Let's zoom into the life of a famous monarch. Henry VIII, perhaps the most famous English king, is often depicted as a mountain of excess: food, wives, and vanity. He was known to have a penchant for new clothes and baths. When he felt ill, he kept his own bathroom at Hampton Court, but even this was a labor for dozens of servants. Water heated in the kitchens, poured up long corridors into his tub, which was set up in his private room, then dismantled and cleaned afterward. Queen Isabella of Castile, ruler of Spain, lived surrounded by strict Catholic scrutiny and ritual. She is said to have bathed just twice in her entire life, both before her marriages. Was this just religious zeal or a strategic choice? In her world, water was both a sacrament and a danger. Doctors believed that water could open the skin's pores to deadly illness floating in the air. And so, the dirtier the king or queen, the healthier they might become in theory. Away from the court, traveling royalty faced even harsher conditions. Imagine Henry II of England, trudging through bitter winters or burning continental summers, trudging from manor to muddy tent to windswept battlefield. Out on campaign, his bath might be little more than a pail of rainwater emptied over his head. Sometimes not even that. A rag dipped in wine might do, but only for nobles with access to the court's portable luxuries. This culture of semi-existence with dirt didn't mean royalty ignored hygiene altogether. Tooth and nail cleaning, for example, was a complex ritual. Medieval nobles chewed fragrant twigs or cloth, rubbed gums with seeds, and used aromatic waters for mouthwash, not out of medical understanding, but from fear of breath so foul it might offend God, guests, or the king himself. Hair presented its own problems. Queens might wrap their heads in cloth at night, powder their scalps with fragrant dusts, or even rub in oil and then scrape it off with a special comb. Barbers and hairdressers were paid not only for style, but for lice checking. Everyone, from king to scullery maid, lived in the shadow of infestations. Lice, fleas, sometimes even ticks. The rich could afford regular purging and linen changing. The poor not so much. Queens, with elaborate hairdos and heavy headgear, often washed their hair less than their bodies. Instead, hair was doused in perfumed powders or hidden beneath silk veils and woven snoods for weeks at a time. One brush or headscarf, used by multiple women of the court, could pass lice from princess to attendant to visiting noble in a silent wave. We moderns tend to imagine filth as democratic, but even dirt came in social classes. The king's bath was sometimes scented with exotic spices and rare rose oil. The queen's bath might involve a silver-handled sponge or imported thin soap bars from Italy. Peasant families sometimes hauled water from a distant well to a corner of a cottage, but kings enjoyed water carried over miles by servants, heated for hours, poured only once. The largest royal palaces eventually built permanent bath chambers, stone-lined rooms with drains and benches as stifling as a Roman sauna. But this was the rare exception. Most of the time, bathing was a portable, laborious, awkward spectacle, and once the lord or lady was clean, the tub and its dirty water were emptied by servants out the nearest window, or in some cases, straight into the castle courtyard. Clothing played its own role in this low-hygiene world. If the skin could not be cleaned, it could at least be kept covered. Multiple layers of linen, wool, and fine silk acted as a barrier between dirt and flesh. Nobles changed their undergarments more often than outer ones, believing clean linen could draw out impurities and odors. Some luxury-minded monarchs demanded several outfits a day, not to dazzle, but to mask the slow rise of body odor. But even with these efforts, the smell of human existence was everywhere. Think of grand halls filled with musicians, the rich smell of roasted game, flowers for the queen, and underneath, the sweet rot of unwashed bodies and the burnt tang of perfumed sachets masking something deeper. Public baths, by contrast, continued to thrive for a while in places like France and the Holy Roman Empire. Some towns tried to preserve Roman bathhouses where anyone, even a passing king, could drop by for a steam and a soak. But the Black Death in the 14th century changed everything. Public bathing was blamed for spreading plague, and one by one, the bathhouses closed forever. Bathing lost friends and gained myths. It became suspicious, then forgotten. So what about royal children, princesses with delicate skin, and little princes wandering muddy courtyards? Rarely did they see a tub. More likely, a nursemaid would cleanse them with a damp cloth and powder, then change underclothes again and again as they grew soiled. The idea of a daily bath, so common to us, would have seemed the height of reckless luxury or even cruel. Yet the fascination for extreme hygiene was not absent. Some monarchs, like Louis XIV of France, claimed to loathe bathing. He is said to have bathed only twice in all his 76 years. Others, like Henry IV, enjoyed extravagant soaks, turning his bath into an occasion for music, poetry, and political discussion. But these were personalities, not routines. Habits changed from king to king, era to era. By the end of the Middle Ages, contact with the East, new trade routes, and the Renaissance spirit slowly brought a new culture of bathing. Soap makers from Italy, perfumers from Spain, and doctors from Constantinople began promoting more regular cleanliness, at least among those who could afford imported luxury. The private stew bath became a marker of decadent elites. A deep tub, heated stones, and piles of scented petals in a private chamber. Some forward-thinking queens insisted on one bath per week, a radical, even shocking demand at court. But for every weekly bath, dozens of nobles still clung to their faith in linen, powders, and perfume, but not in water. The association between water and danger, between naked skin and sin, survived well into the early modern era. Many kings preferred to mask odor rather than risk opening their pores to the invisible, deadly miasma they believed drifted through the castle air. So next time you imagine yourself living in a castle, decked in silk robes and golden crowns, remember, behind every portrait of regal beauty, behind every coronation, feast, and perfumed banquet, there was the sharp, unceasing odor of humans who feared and rarely braved the bath. If you survived this immersion in royal filth, don't stop here. The world's dirtiest secrets still hide in the cracks of every old stone wall, waiting for unfiltered curiosity to dig them up. Subscribe, prepare your nose, and stay tuned, because in the great palace of history, the worst scents always rise to the top.